Sound check. Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way, Yorkville. Happy Monday, guys. Hope you guys had a great weekend. All right, so tonight I'm going to be talking about fasting for weight loss. The question is do you need to fast in order to lose weight? Who should fast? What are some of the benefits, some of the drawbacks of fasting? I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail during this live broadcast. And if you're joining us, make sure that you say hello. Let me know where you're watching from, too. So I love to see people from watching all over the continental United States, in fact, all over the world. So please let me know if you're watching the replay as well. Say hello and also let me know where you're watching from. So fasting specifically for weight loss. The reason why I want to go over this is because I had a lot of people reach out to me. Yes, I did have a lot of people reach out to me when I asked those questions about fasting. And I get this question a lot too, in consults or talking to people, individually about their labs, like, do I need to fast or whatnot? So let's talk about fasting and let's help you to see kind of what it is and what it isn't. Am I a fan of fasting? Absolutely. However, I don't think it's a tool. So one of the things I'll tell you is as it's a tool, but it's not like the only thing that you should be doing. So fasting for weight loss. So again, guys, if you're watching, let me know where you're watching from. Hi, Pam. It's good to see you from Wisconsin. So fasting for weight loss. And what's interesting is I just had a gentleman who came in for his 4-week follow up, and he didn't do any fasting. However, in 4 weeks, he lost about 18 pounds. Joint pain went away. And then, he went from 6 months of not being able to have a solid bowel movement to his bowel movement starting to firm back up. So this can be very, very important. So if you are from the Chicagoland area and you want to work with us directly, make sure that you get registered for our next event, which is going to be the inflammation event. This is an in-person event. Tuesday, February 25th, a week from tomorrow at 6 o'clock sharp PM. Get registered for that. Who is this for? We talk a lot about inflammation. I know on social media, a lot of other people talk about inflammation, but when you think about it, they don't know what inflammation is or where it's coming from or what the response actually is. But yes, this is involved with weight loss, no doubt about it. Inflammation is involved in cancer, infertility, thyroid disease, the gastrointestinal system, chronic joint pain, type 2 diabetes, autoimmunity, absolutely huge. And also in response to hormones, because a lot of people come in and they want me to balance their hormones. I'm like, well, your body already knows to do that. And your body's not down regulating your hormones. It's just adapting to all the stressors that are going on. So, but if you want to get your life and you want to get your health under control and you don't know where to start, then make sure that you get registered for that inflammation event coming up next week, next Tuesday, February 25th, 6 o'clock PM. So if you're from the Chicagoland area, make sure that you get registered for that. All you have to do is go to our link tree. You'll see that in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, um, you'll see that in the chat. But if you're watching from YouTube, if you're watching from Rumble, thank you guys so much for joining us. But if you click on that link, you'll see the first thing to pop up will be the inflammation event to work with me in person. And if you click on that, that will take you to Eventbrite, and that will give you the link to be able to register for it. It only takes about 30, 40 seconds to register yourself. And then a member of my team will be reaching out to you to confirm your attendance at that event. The only thing that we ask is if you're coming, please make sure that you show up, okay? Be a person of your word. In addition to that, guys, coming up, we have Cindy Schroba from Illinois Thermography, who's going to be at our office. That's coming up Thursday, March 13th. So in a couple of weeks, Cindy will be doing thermography at our office because I have a lot of people who ask me a lot. They're like, well, what do you think about thermography? And I'm like, thermography is pretty awesome. Okay. And what do you think of our medical system right now and what they call, prevention? Really what prevention is it's the early detection of disease that's already there. So that's not really prevention because you're just finding disease earlier. Um, but however, the reason why I'm a fan of thermography is because, ladies, you can see changes in your breast before they even are showing up as tumors. So do you want to find a tumor when it's small, or do you want to actually see that you're starting to see physiological changes on the breast tissue um, earlier than when you would even have some kind of tumor formation? That's why, people say, getting a colonoscopy or something like that. I'm like, well, that's early detection of disease that's already there. But what if you actually were doing things in order to see changes in physiology? Because in order for there to be some kind of tumor, there has to be a physiological change that's taking place. But not only that, so many people where they might have breast cancer or colon cancer or something like that. And all they do is they just cut, poison, burn. Not to say that that's not needed, but they never do anything in order to restore a person's immune system back to normal, number one. But then number two, they're not doing anything to change and reverse the physiology that brought it on in the first place. Okay. So if you are, from the Chicagoland area, yeah, you can go ahead and register to get your first thermography, and we really don't have anything to do with it other than hosting Cindy at our office Thursday, March 13th. And if you want to schedule for that, you'll reach out directly to her. So you can go ahead and just pause this video, 815-482-6224. So get in contact with her and she'll schedule you at our venue here in Yorkville, Illinois. Okay. Now, I also want to say this. I might cry. But tomorrow is my youngest son, Elias Sheldon Thompson. It's his second birthday. This is a picture of him. And this is a picture of him at Disney with his older brother. I have three boys. This is our middle oldest, Jacoby. But Elias is 2 years old tomorrow. So happy birthday, Elias. I love you, bud. I'll be home very soon. And I know he's watching right now, and I'm sure he's getting very excited. He is just a bundle of joy. And if you know the backstory with how he was conceived, it is just quite a miracle. And that's why all my kids are special to me, but he holds a special place in my heart, especially. So let's talk about fasting as I start to recover, okay? Let's talk about fasting. What is fasting? Because I want you to understand what fasting is, because some people, they their life has changed with fasting, and then they tell everyone that fasting is the way to go. It's the only thing that you can do. And guys, I will tell you this. Have I fasted before? Absolutely. I have probably done a 3-day fast a dozen times. I have also done a 5-day fast. I've done a 6-day fast. There's not too many people who have fasted more than I have. So the first idea is, what on earth is fasting? Because people say, oh, well, fasting, and it's fasting, autophagy and inflammation and blah, blah, and weight loss and all this stuff. But I want it would help you to make sense of fasting. And is fasting good? Yeah, it can be, but there's certain people that just won't do very well when it comes to fasting. So what is fasting? Well, let's get the actual definition right. It's the deliberate refrainment from eating. So this is you consciously not eating. Now, I will also say this is that intermittent fasting is not fasting. It's time restricted eating, because a true fast should last over 24 hours. So you got different types of fasts: 24 hours, 48, 36, 5-day fast, 6-day fast. So there's different lengths of that fast. But the reason why it needs to be over 24 hours, because if you look at transit time when you eat food and how it goes through the gastrointestinal system, transit time before it goes from the mouth down to the south end of the digestive system and you are pooping it out, that can usually take 3 to 5 days. And that's why, even if you're doing a 3-day fast, you might have bowel movements at day 2 or sometimes even day 3. So fasting is the deliberate refrainment from eating. Now, there's different types of fasts. I want you to make sure that you know that there's a lot of different fasting, quote unquote, techniques that are going on. So number one, prolonged fasting. What is prolonged fasting? Well, this is just you not eating any solid food and having water. And sometimes I'll recommend for some people some minerals, like potassium and magnesium and some salt, things like that. But prolonged fasting is going to be over 24 hours. And you have, a 2-day fast, you have a 3-day fast. I've actually have fasted for 5 days and 6 days. People's jaw drops. Like, I don't understand how you can do that. And it's like, well, it's it's hard, but it's not as hard as what people think that it is. Then you also have alternate day fasting, in which you fast for 24 hours and then you eat, and then you fast again for 24 hours. And then you also have the 5-2 quote unquote diet. And that's when you eat normally for 5 days and then you fast for 48 hours and then go back and resume your eating as well. And then you have intermittent fasting, which really isn't fasting, but it's more of what you would call a time restricted eating. So you're basically, what you're doing is you're just shrinking down the amount of time that you can eat during the day. So, some people get really good at it and they are go into 20 hours of not eating and then 4 hours of feeding. And that can be very beneficial for a lot of people, because one of the things that it does is that it just shrinks down your opportunity to get food in your body. And so if you have a hard, fast rule of saying, I'm not going to eat during these times, well, then one of the things that happens is it tends to really cut down on mindless eating and mindless snacking, especially. So intermittent fasting, there's nothing miracle. It's not anything magical about that, other than it just helps you to reduce a lot of mindless eating and just to shrink down the amount of time that you have in order to eat your food in. And then you also have OMAD, or one meal a day. It stands for one meal a day, which is really just a form of time restricted eating. Now, um, I I don't eat many meals throughout the day. In fact, when I go home, I will actually have my first solid meal of the day. So it's kind of like one meal a day, or OMAD. Now, are there challenges with doing that? Well, yes, not a lot of people can get to the point where they're able to only eat one meal a day. But the other thing is too is if you look at food not as just calories or energy in, but you're also looking at nutrients in, it can be very difficult to get your nutrients in, like your certain vitamins, certain minerals, like potassium. Um, and then also getting fiber in, things like that, if you're only eating one meal a day. So this is just another form of time restricted eating. So there's different types of quote unquote fasting techniques that are actually out there. But the question is why would people fast? Why on earth would people fast? Because usually they say, hey, I'm doing a fast right now. People are like, why would you want to do that? Well, I'll tell you why a lot of people want to do, some kind of fast. And usually what people start off is some kind of 3-day fast, is because they want to lose a lot of weight. But I'll explain to you why people can lose a lot of weight, and why, if you do lose a lot of weight by doing a 3-day fast, then there's probably some other problems or issues that are going on. Another reason why people would want to fast is to lower inflammation. And I'll give you kind of a hint. If inflammation goes way down when you fast, then they probably have the presence of a lot of food allergies and poor gastrointestinal function too. And I've had men do a 3-day fast in order to help them to increase their testosterone. The reality is that the fast doesn't increase the testosterone, but the refeed after you finish the fast, that's what actually can increase the testosterone, especially. And men do a lot better with fasting. I'll explain to you why in just a second, just because it doesn't cause depletion of hormones, because the release of testosterone has nothing to do with short-term stress or things like that. So should I fast? Dr. Nate, should I fast? Well, here's some of the things that you really need in place to see if you should, in fact, fast or not. Okay. So, number one, what are your adrenals like? So, this is why knowing your cortisol rhythm can play a huge role, especially when you talk about fasting. Okay. So, I'll show you this in just a second. So if you have very low cortisol function, fasting is probably not going to be one of the best things for you, but just because cortisol is a stress hormone that's designed to start mobilizing stored sugar. The other question you have to ask yourself is, if you're a cycling woman, typically under one circumstance do I recommend fasting. I actually recommend it today to someone, by the way. But if you are a cycling woman, then fasting is not going to be the best thing for you. Now, if you're menopausal, in which your hormones are basically coming from the adrenal glands and you don't have these huge hormone fluctuations every 28 days, then it's not going to make a big impact on your hormone levels. Now, men typically can fast a little bit more or not have as many issues when it comes to that. And that's why I typically say that men will have a lot better time with fasting as well, just because it doesn't play a role in hormone fluctuations like a cycling woman would. But Sometimes too, people have a lot of, quote unquote inflammation, and that has a lot to do with other things. So that the inflammation may be coming from having a lot of IgG and or IgE food allergies. The inflammation might be coming from actually fat mass, because fat mass in and of itself is going to be very inflammatory. But also, what are your insulin levels? The next question is are people even measuring your insulin levels? Because honestly, your insulin levels should be running at about 3 to 5. I've seen some people's insulin levels be at 25. I've seen at 50. And in fact, one time I saw it at 900, and I wondered if the doctor was actually trying to kill this person. So then you also have the idea of leptin resistance. And so maybe I'll go over that next week. But leptin is a hunger hormone that has a lot to do with long-term satiety, or you just feeling full or not hungry all the time. But if people have a real hard time and they're hungry all the time, they can't really tap into those hunger cues of when they should eat and when they shouldn't eat. These people, if they have leptin resistance, it's not a problem because it's released by fat cells, but not the fact that you can't make leptin, it's the fact that your brain just can't sense it in the hypothalamus, which means that you really don't have very many hunger cues. And one of the ways to get that back on track is to, in fact, lose a lot of fat mass. That's why when people say, I don't understand why this person just can't stop eating. Well, the more fat that you have, the more leptin you're going to be producing. And the more that your brain is exposed to leptin, the more resistant it's going to be to hearing those cues, especially. And here is one of the reasons why I would recommend a fast for a woman is if they have an H. pylori infection. So H. pylori, guys, is actually normal bacteria in your stomach, sits around the bottom of the stomach, known as the pyloric sphincter. But if you are always low stomach acid, chronically low stomach acid, because you're in fight or flight all the time and you can't get into rest and digest, then those bacteria can start to migrate up into the stomach, and they can actually start to cause some irritation and inflammation of the stomach lining, which can produce an ulcer. And in fact, if you get to that point where it becomes that bad, then yes, even if you're a woman, even if it is going to mess up your menstrual cycle, then fasting is one of the things that you should do in order to help with that stomach ulcer. And one of the reasons why is because if you keep releasing stomach acid in order to break down your proteins to sterilize your food, well, that tissue just continually gets irritated all the time, and it's kind of like just pouring, battery acid on an open wound or on a blister, and it's going to hurt. So if you refrain from food, help to protect the stomach lining by not introducing stomach acid into that area, then do some other things, with some aloe vera juice, probably some licorice root and things like that. Those are some things that can help the stomach lining to heal during that fast. Because remember, the stomach lining turns over pretty quickly. And so you want to make sure that you're taking some antimicrobials that are beneficial to help kill off some of the H. pylori. And then after that, once you get that to heal, you got to make sure that you change the environment quite a bit to keep the bacteria where they belong, which is down the pyloric sphincter and not actually within the body or the fundus of the stomach. And that's really the only time I would ever tell a cycling woman to fast. And I've only told 2 people, to actually do some kind of fast. And yeah, they'll see some changes with their menstrual cycle. Yeah, it won't be easy for them. But if you don't get rid of that inflammatory trigger, then one of the things is that they'll never, ever get better. And that's the problem. And then you'll start seeing some changes take place just because of the chronic infection and inflammation and things like that. So let me go over with you fasting and cortisol. Okay. Fasting and cortisol. Now, contrary to, to what you'll see on social media, because the social media influencers, they just demonize the hormone cortisol. And cortisol is not a bad hormone, okay? Because can your cortisol levels be elevated? Yes. During having a lot of mental stress, being chronically in fight or flight. And I want you to think about it. If you're in fight or flight, and if you do have a bear chasing you, if your body thinks that a bear is chasing me, either it's a real or a perceived stress, the body's going to try to always be mobilizing sugars as much as possible. In fact, if you're a type 2 diabetic, you have a hard time with blood sugar control, your cortisol levels are going to be extremely high, especially. So if you look at this, and you look at this person, one of the best ways in order to measure cortisol is, yes, you can pull it out of the blood and you can do a fasting cortisol just to see where those levels are at. But if you are measuring your circadian rhythm and you're doing to see how you are releasing cortisol for a whole 24 hours. You can measure your whole cortisol production and collection for 24 hours. So here's a person who suffered with terrible fatigue. So we measure a cortisol over 24 hours, and you can see over here very low free cortisol. And there's a difference between free and metabolized cortisol. And you look at how low the metabolized cortisol is, it is extremely low. And in fact, when you see that that's going on, there is something very inflammatory happening inside the body. And yes, this person did, in fact, have mold. But if you look at her circadian rhythm, normally her cortisol release should be in the middle of these two black lines, and it should elevate in the late morning, early afternoon, and then taper off. And this is why, if you have good, normal circadian rhythm, this is why your cortisol levels should be low at night. And you shouldn't be having problems falling asleep, especially. So if you look at hers, extremely low in the morning. So we had a hard time getting out of bed. That's what helps you to get out of bed. Extremely low in the late morning, extremely low in the afternoon, and extremely low at night. Okay. So you see how low this is. This is someone who wouldn't do very well with fasting. And the reason why is because if she tries to fast and the blood sugars dip back down, you're going to need a release of cortisol from the adrenal glands in order to start mobilizing sugar to get those blood sugars back up. So in this case, she tries to fast, she's going to have chronically low blood sugars and she's just not going to be able to get out of bed. So in this case, with extremely low cortisol, this is not something that I would recommend at all. So you need to figure out why the adrenal glands are actually doing that. And I had another individual too who's like, I can't get my blood sugars up. They're just always so low and whatnot. We tested, looked at some inflammatory triggers, and this person was just chock full of mold. And usually that's one of the things. And this is why, guys, when people say, oh, I have adrenal fatigue, I'm like, I don't think you have adrenal fatigue. Your adrenals are trying to adapt to a lot of inflammatory triggers. And that's why even if you look at a Dutch test, you can see the presence of cortisol and how it's converting it into cortisone. And usually if you have low cortisol and very high elevated cortisone, low cortisol, elevated cortisone, this can be, hey, something's a little bit wonky inside the body. There's a big inflammatory trigger, and that's what the body is actually trying to do. But in the meantime, one of the things that you'll feel is you just will feel very tired and have a hard time trying to mobilize blood sugars, which means your energy is going to suffer quite a bit. So I want to give you this because, back a couple of years ago, we were doing, something known as the Man Up Challenge. And we may do it again this, coming up in this spring, maybe this summer. But this was, an event that we did 4 weeks for men, mainly just to help them with their testosterone from a very general level. And so what we would do during the Man Up Challenges, we would start them off with the 3-day fast. They didn't know they were getting into it. But if you're going to join it coming up in the spring, now you know what you're going to be up against. So we would start off with doing a 3-day fast. And then I would have them do like time restricted eating for basically fasting for 18 hours and then feeding for 6 hours with some very stringent guidelines as far as what they could eat. This was a very strict no sugar diet, which is basically meats and veggies only. And then I'll show you the difference between when a gentleman did that and then he got very, very advanced by getting testing. You're going to see that the testing showed actually a lot better results as well. So if you look at this is an in-body test, which is about as accurate as you can get as far as looking at, body fat percentage and muscle mass and looking at overall weight. So that's why when you look at body fat percentage, there's never one test that's 100% accurate. I mean, probably the most accurate one is a DEXA scan. But, you got DEXA scan, underwater weighing, and then you have an in-body, which I think for what you are doing can give you a pretty accurate assessment as far as looking at your upper and lower body fat percentage and trying to tie those things back in together. So if you look at this black box, these two boxes that you see here, this was him at the start, and this was him after doing a 3-day fast and then intermittent fasting, and then doing pretty much a no sugar diet for about 28 days or so. So you can actually see that he lost about 8 or 9 pounds, and he wasn't obese by any stretch of the imagination. And then you can see his body fat actually went down a fair amount, which is good. A little bit of muscle mass that was lost. But here's the interesting thing. When he came in, he's like, "I think I'm missing something." I'm like, "You probably are." And then we measured his food allergies. We did some blood testing going on. And then when we did that, I said, "Hey, now one of the things you can do is let's do a 30-day detox." And in fact, basically all detox is helping the liver biotransform things to pull fat and to be able to metabolize it, process it, and then get rid of it through the gastrointestinal system. And so there's a very specific way in which you should eat. So he did a 30-day detox, was also doing no sugar at that time. But the really important thing too is he was avoiding any inflammatory triggers, so his food allergies and things like that. So basically, if you see the same amount of time that he did this, you can see he basically lost the same amount of weight. His skeletal muscle mass actually went up, but if you look at his body fat percentage went down an incredible amount from 18%. He ended up at basically 6%. And this is, 21 pounds lost, but 6% actually from where he started, almost 8% body fat was lost, during the first time when he did it, over the course of about 6 months or so. And I actually think, rather than doing a 3-day fast, getting down to the nitty gritty of it and, taking into consideration things like your blood sugars, your insulin levels, your food allergies. And I think doing that and helping with liver function and things like that can actually have a lot better effect than just saying, I'm just going to do some kind of 3-day fast, especially. So now a lot of times people tote the benefits or they tout the benefits of a 3-day fast and they say, oh, it's anti-inflammatory. I'm like, well, of course it's going to be anti-inflammatory. Any kind that you remove all food, you're going to remove any kind of inflammatory triggers. Okay. So can you get the anti-inflammatory benefits of fasting without even fasting? And the answer is yes, absolutely you can. This is why looking at gastrointestinal function food allergy testing can be so important. Um, and with fasting, I got to the point where, if I would fast, I wouldn't lose that much weight. But I've seen some people doing a 3-day fast and they lose 20 pounds. And I'm like, whoa, you're losing that much weight. I'll explain to you why there can be so many different issues and problems that are going on. But if you look at this really on how I believe a person should eat, most of us have it completely upside down. See, we think about losing weight and we think, what supplements should I take? Then we look at, our macronutrients. We're looking at protein, fat, carbohydrates. And then we look at our micronutrients and then insulin and then non-inflammatory, when in fact you should flip it upside down. And you really should talk about non-inflammatory foods. And this is like, if you're looking at IgG food allergy testing, why this can be so beneficial. So the first thing that you should actually look at is it inflammatory or not? The second thing is you should be asking is this going to cause an insulin spike, or how much insulin is this going to cause? And this has a lot to do with carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates, creating an insulin response. Then you got to consider your micronutrients. And what I mean by micronutrients are going to be things like vitamins, minerals, things like that. And then you look at your macronutrients, which is going to be like your fats, your carbohydrates, your proteins. And then at the very top, guys, really should be any kind of supplements, although this is what people ask me the most, because now you're talking about, things like turmeric, you're thinking about berberines, like Oregon grape, or golden seal or something like that. But we're always thinking, what can I take in order to lose weight? And it's like, no, it should be a habit. And this is why things that aren't creating an inflammatory response are going to be the best way for people to go, especially, and then paying attention to your insulin levels, then looking at your micronutrients and your macronutrients. And that's why most people have it completely upside down, which is why they have such a hard time when it comes with weight loss. So weight loss and fasting. So if you fast and you lose a lot of weight, I'm going to tell you something. So, that gentleman that, came back, he's like, oh, I lost 18 pounds in 1 month. And I'm like, congratulations. That wasn't all fat. So if you lost, 15 pounds doing a 3-day fast or a 5-day fast, the first thing that I'm going to tell you is congratulations. It was not all fat. And the reason why is because once you abstain from food for a long period of time, you're going to lower down inflammation, especially if you don't know food allergies, or you're having a hard time with the gastrointestinal system, having low stomach acid, leading to the development of a lot of food allergies. But if you lower down inflammation, you're going to lower down swelling. And that might be in the gastrointestinal system, which is where a lot of people will lose a lot of water weight, is going to be within the gastrointestinal system. But the other thing too is if you lose a lot of weight with fasting, one of the things you got to understand is that if you consume a lot of sugar, if you have a lot of stored sugar in your liver, you have a lot of stored sugar, in your muscle cells, which is where the body stores sugar, and glycogen is basically just long branch sugars that the body stores. But if you start losing that, you start blowing through that, start metabolizing that as you fast, you will also lose a lot of water. And that's why when we've taken people through the Man Up Challenge, one of the questions I'll ask them is, after day 2, how many of you are just urinating like a racehorse? And you are going to start to lose a lot of water as you start to lose a lot of stored sugar. So if you lose a lot of weight during, with any kind of fast, you just got to understand that probably a lot of that weight loss is a lot of inflammation and a lot of stored water that comes on with stored sugar. And it's not necessarily all fat loss, just so you know that. But the real true test is if someone is doing, great things. Let's say that they're keeping their sugar low, they don't have a lot of stored sugar, paying attention to their food allergies, probably doing a 3-day fast, they probably would not lose a tremendous amount of weight. However, if you're not paying attention to any of that, then yeah, I've seen sometimes people lose 25 pounds just doing a 3-day fast. But just so you know, it's not all fat. A lot of it is going to be water weight too. All right. So final thought. And as soon as I started talking about this, someone brought it up, earlier today. But and I've done whole live videos on this, and I know that when I say this, I have a lot of the people who are doing this, and they might have lost weight from doing this, and so they just staunchly defend any criticism I have for a lot of these weight loss medications and things like that. So Ozempic or any kind of GLP-1 agonist. So this might be Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, or anything like that. Bariatric surgeries and appetite suppressants. Okay, think of the thing that doctors want to do to try to help you lose weight. Well, what's the overall goal? They're designed to force you to eat less, either by shrinking down anatomy or by chemically making you have a stress response, or by you just trying to chemically lower hunger. They're designed to force you to eat less. That's one of the biggest things I will tell you guys is, people say, oh my gosh, it's life changing. I'm like, well, congratulations, you ate less. And that's, that's one of the things that gets me, is that people are willing to chemically manipulate their physiology for $1,200 a month, all with the fact of just knowing that they should be doing something. And that is in fact eating less. But the problem is that there's side effects with this. Is there side effects with Ozempic and GLP-1 agonists? Yep, we're learning about them every single day. So optic nerve inflammation, getting the gallbladder removed, bariatric surgery can cause a host of other problems. And this is why during a lot of bariatric surgeries, they just remove the gallbladder because they know that the gallbladder is going to get filled with stones. And that does happen quite a bit. You also can become anemic, from doing that. And then appetite suppressants. We basically just remember, when you're under a high amount of stress, a huge amount of stress, hunger typically will go down a little bit. So they're just trying to chemically manipulate your hunger and things like that. They're just designed to force you to eat less. The problem is, you do it long term, there's going to be side effects. There is going to be side effects. There's no doubt about it. I can't believe that people are surprised that there's any kind of side effects. There's going to be side effects. And I love how people think fasting is going to be dangerous, yet they'll go to the doctor and fill their prescriptions with all kinds of drugs in order to lose weight and have no problems doing that. But you tell them to fast, and boy, are they scared to death to do it. Okay. Now, a lot of these things, we talk about side effects, is a lot of these side effects, they're just not known. And the reason is like, are they even studying the long-term effects? If they're not studying the long-term effects, but they're telling you to go on that medication, you know what you are? You're the guinea pig. So my final thought is this: how can the benefits outweigh the risks when they hide the side effects or they refuse to do any kind of long-term study? How can the benefits outweigh the risk? Because you know that they say this all the time. Oh, well, the benefits outweigh the risks. We have 20 years of data to show that the benefits outweigh the risks. And I'm like, Well, wait a second. You have 20 years of data. And in fact, you actually were putting people as pigs in order to see the data. You didn't have the data before you decided to give people some of the medication. And that's why, guys, when you look at things like Bextra, Vioxx, thalidomide, you look at that, they were all approved as safe and effective until they wrecked people's lives or maybe even killed them. So how can the benefits outweigh the risk when they hide the side effects or they refuse to do any kind of long-term study? Are you ready for it? How about vaccines? This will probably get me banned on YouTube, but I don't give a rat's ass if it's going to or not. I really, really don't care because, even if you thought about it, I've actually have told people, show me a long-term study. Show me a long-term study that involves a placebo um, versus the active ingredient, and there are none. I've in fact people who said, you're just a dumb chiropractor. Here's the study, and it didn't have a placebo, and they were too stupid in order to know the difference between the two. But the thing is there are no long-term studies in regards to that. And if you say, oh, well, we have years and years of data, showing that they are safe and effective, I'm like, no, you don't. You have a bunch of guinea pigs, and then you have people who have been injured by them, but you refuse to acknowledge that as any kind of injury. And this is what gets me. This is not a jibby jabby argument, but this is one of the things that gets me. Back in 1986, they had the Vaccine Protection Act that was passed by Congress. The reason why is because they had to absolve any vaccine manufacturer of any kind of liability. You can't sue them anymore because they actually said that vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. And they said if they can come back and sue us for any kind of damage, we're going to stop making vaccines. So they had to absolve them from any kind of liability. And so that's why, guys, if someone's damaged from a vaccine, someone gets injured by a vaccine, you can't go after the manufacturer. You have to go through the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which is a kangaroo court when it comes to actually getting any kind of compensation. However, they have paid out $5 to $6 billion. I haven't checked in a couple of years, but at the last time I checked, it was over $5 billion that they had paid out. But it's very tough to get any kind of compensation in regards to that. So that's why, it's absolutely insane, when people talk about safe and effective, and I'm like, are they even looking for any kind of safety when it comes to that? Because there isn't long-term safety. You know what they say? They say, we test to see if there was any immediate reaction over 4 to 5 days. And nope, it was safe. We didn't see a lot of reactions after 4 to 5 days. But the problem is they're not talking about 1 year to 2 years to 3 years to 4 years. Kind of makes you wonder about the COV, et cetera, jibby jabby, because I think that's hurt a lot of people. And I've actually done videos on blood work that's shown that, yep, this is actually causing some issues when it comes to the immune system. And YouTube took it down after 1 million views. And I think the total number of views that video got was about 20 million views. And all I was doing was just showing the science of just showing how it was causing harm when it came to the immune system, especially. So anytime that you talk about the benefits outweigh the risk, well, you need to know truly what are the risk factors, when it comes to that, because I don't think that they're actually studying long-term risk, or I think that they don't want you to know what some of the long-term risks are. So, guys, fasting, okay? That was a kind of a tangent that I went on. I apologize. But fasting, there's some benefit with doing it. I don't recommend that necessarily every single person does it, but yeah, I've recommended it for some people. But guys, I think the biggest reason why a lot of people want to fast, or they want to do those type of things, has to do with inflammation. It has to do with weight loss. But I'm going to tell you that you don't necessarily have to fast in order to get all the benefits from fasting, especially. So coming up, our next inflammation talk that's going to be in person, Tuesday, February 25th at 6:00 p.m. This is going to be a week from tomorrow. If you're from the Chicagoland area, you want to work with us directly, whether it's weight loss or whether it's hormone problems, whether it's type 2 diabetes, whatever, joint pain, whatever it might be, make sure that you get to that event, because I will show you the first steps that you need to do in order to start taking control of your health again. Guys, when it comes to your health, if you want to be satisfied with our healthcare system, don't ever get sick, because I have so many people who get chronically ill and then they realize, guys, our healthcare system's not here to save me. It's just here to perpetually keep me sick. So a lot of people don't know that much when it comes to being chronically ill. And you have to start figuring this out, because I will tell you this, no one's coming to save you. You have to start taking control. You have to start taking 100% responsibility for your health. And the place to start is going to be at that inflammation event coming up a week from Tuesday, February 25th, 6 o'clock p.m. If you're from the Chicagoland area, please make sure that you go. Click on our link tree, either in the description of this video or in the first comment of this video. You'll see it on all our socials. Click that right now. Don't delay, and get registered for that inflammation event. Make sure that you get registered for it. Remember, my staff will reach out to you to confirm your attendance at that event. So the next one will be a week from Tuesday. So fasting for weight loss, can it work? Absolutely, it can. But you have to know kind of why it's working, if I should do it. And this is why getting some blood work done in order to try to figure this out can be very, very beneficial for it. Am I a fan of fasting? Yes. Do I think it's the only thing that you should do? Nope. Can it be a good tool and not a panacea for everything? Yes, it can be a great tool. I've used it myself. But do I think it's the end all be all to everything that you should be doing? No, I don't. And I just explained to you why. So fasting for weight loss. So I hope, guys, you got benefit from this live video. And I hope, guys, that you follow our page. I hope that you guys, follow us. We're always trying to give out the latest and greatest as far as great information when it comes to health, when it comes to wellness. And yes, we do know about wellness, because I see a lot of doctors talking about wellness, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So anyway, so fasting for weight loss, make sure, guys, that you know if you should do it, how you should do it. And I'll be coming live next week. I don't have a topic yet, so if you have a recommendation, go ahead and put it in the comments below. So, guys, it's time for me to go home and wish my youngest son, Elias, who turns 2 tomorrow, to wish him a very, very happy birthday before he goes to bed. So, guys, I appreciate you being on this live video. Be well, be blessed. Remember who you are, and we'll see you guys next week for our next live broadcast. Be well. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.